Welcome to the Human Evolution Podcast, where we dive deep into the science, philosophies, and strategies that create real and lasting change. I'm Ori Goldstein, and here we leave traditional self-help behind and map the real terrain of true personal development.
We've talked about, psilocybin, which obviously is a big topic in the news these days, or in the medical community. A lot of new studies are into it now after it was banned. The studies weren't even allowed for all those years after that. Was it the Harvard study with Timothy Lear and the other guy, Ram Dass now he calls himself. But yeah, there was that big study in the 60s and with some pretty amazing results. And then the government got a hold of it, and they classified it as a Schedule 1, I think, up there with heroin and everything else. I forget where it landed on
I think it made it there with Nixon's war on drugs as such. I think that just basically
Right.
every single drug was just considered, every single form of recreational drug pretty much made it into that Schedule 1 kind of filing.
What a shame, because now we got to catch up on all that. I'm glad it's being studied now, and there's a lot going into it, and a lot of people are donating to the research. And of course, it's been available all over the world in different forms since,
Before
however
men.
long ago.
I mean,
Yeah, well, right.
have you ever heard of the stoned ape theory, basically? That the concept of men is that we really are just apes that discovered mushrooms and therefore expanded our brains?
I don't recall the entire story, but this is how consciousness came about, something like that, or
To some degree, that human beings are basically apes that over time ate the medicinal mushrooms or ate the psychedelic mushrooms, and their brains kept on expanding. They started expanding their thought, etc. And that was a push towards evolution that created human beings with having the larger front cortex, etc. Just because they were taking psychedelic substances. There's no real proof behind it, but it is a very, very interesting theory.
yeah. And I know there's tons of different strains out there and everything else, and they've been found all over the world and older ancient civilizations, and even some of the indigenous peoples, all over the place are using them now. And we talked about Oaxaca, Mexico, on yesterday's show or the previous
Yeah.
show. And I've got a friend there that we can talk to. He's doing a guided ceremonial. So it's probably a touristy type thing, but at least in some sense, it's not to the level of the type of treatments that you do. Obviously, it's not a treatment for him, although he probably
Is it really just recreational? I just don't know enough about the story. If you don't mind sharing, or we can jump beyond this.
I'm not exactly sure either. We'll definitely get him on to talk about it. Just his experience. Just from somebody who's done it recently. I know you've got, or the place you go to in Jamaica and all that. And we could talk about that in a minute as well. But he's doing it as part of something that I guess. It's legitimate there. Obviously, it's Mexico. It's not here. We may be getting to that point in the States where these things will be legitimate. But it's a service that he pays for, and there's it's a ceremonial thing. I'll have to get more details on it so we can share it, but they're going to get together. There's going to be, supervision. So it's not just like, me going down to the 7-Eleven and buying shrooms off somebody and then coming back and, tripping in my pool or anything like that. So yeah, there's going to be some supervision involved in that. And I imagine that there's some traditional things going on there, but there's several providers down there, just like any other town that has a history, and it's known for that because I think this was originally at least discovered for Americans anyway. And the town got overloaded with, I think the name of the person too, wasn't it? Some
Maria
female?
Sabina was the first person that introduced mushrooms to Americans. And then the researchers went back to America, took the mushrooms and actually synthesized psilocybin, took it back to her, and she tried it, and she said that it had the same spirit as the mushrooms. And that was kind of like her approval of psilocybin as the way of doing mushrooms.
Well, and in true American fashion, the town got overrun by celebrities and everything else. And I haven't been there myself, but I could pretty much picture what it looks like now. I do think that some of the more traditional, even maybe where Maria was, is a little bit further up from the actual town, not actually in Oaxaca proper. I think that there's some spiritual sites further out, so hopefully those are still intact. But the experience that my friend Sean's going to do, something you reach out, it's a legitimate business, and I'm not sure what it entails or what the process is, but there is some supervision there, and there's some controlled dosing in so much as that's possible. For anybody who hasn't seen a previous show, Ori does treatments in Jamaica where it's legal to do so, and hopefully it becomes legal to do so in the States soon, where you take people down and you do very in-depth psychedelic trauma treatment. I'll let you explain it better than I'm doing now, but it's something you've been doing for quite a while now. So I'll let you touch on that real quick. But my question was going to be, in what form do you actually have the plants with you?
Yeah, so we actually have someone in Jamaica that supplies us with the raw mushrooms, and we just mix them into fruit juice or whatever it is, an easy way to take it. If a person is really bad, we can crush them up, put them into capsules, and then the person just takes the capsules and doesn't get the taste in their mouth. But almost always with some people, there is going to be, within about 45 minutes of taking the mushrooms, there will be some element of nausea that happens, usually not very bad, but that's really not a big deal. And to just go back to what you were talking about, so what I do in Jamaica, it's called GPRR, or Guided Psychedelic Reprocessing and Reconditioning. And the idea is basically, it's a lot of people go off and do psychedelics. They go off to whatever shaman or whatever person it is that's doing it. And what I just discovered, unfortunately for myself, through some experimentation on myself, was the idea that it's very often when you do the psychedelics, you have these amazing breakthroughs, you have these amazing thoughts, and it just doesn't really guide you towards them. And at the same time, they don't tend to last very often. And so I created a specific protocol where what I do is while the person is under the psychedelic influence, we're actually guiding their trip. So I'm having them listen to affirmations. I'm talking to them. I'm having them pay attention to past thoughts that they may have had. I'm having them think about past traumas, whatever it is. And in the moment we're working, and the psychedelics expanding the mind in that moment allow them to make connections that usually aren't made. So with the psychedelics, I'm guiding them to reprocess and recondition a thought pattern. And then, and then we'll keep locking it in. And then towards the end of the session, what we'll do is we'll start focusing in on, that's great. You just had a wonderful 3-4 hours, whatever it is. How does this actually impact your life? And we actually start discussing, what are you going to feel in 2 weeks from now? How are you going to deal with your mother, your sister, your boss, your wife, whatever it is, knowing these different things? And then after that, what we do is we have them set goals and basically understand how they want to integrate it into their lives while they're still under the subject, while they're still under the influence of the psychedelic. And then that night, we will talk about it again. And this is a week-long process where over the course of the week, we keep going over the same issues until it is completely resolved. It is by far the most intense thing I do, because we also don't do a low dose. So I don't know if you're familiar, but like the average recreational dose, I hate that word recreational, but the average recreational dose of psilocybin is about 3 grams. And very often in GPRR, we're going between 8 and 15 grams. So we're going at beyond even what Timothy Leary called the heroic dose. But what we discover is at that dose, it's weird, and it's one of the weirdest things I've noticed, is that you actually have more control over the state than you do over lower doses, because at lower doses, your conscious mind is around, the psychedelic is around, and they're fighting with each other. When you raise the dose and you actually have someone guiding you, which is so, so, so important at that dose, you can actually work with that person, and you can actually guide the state much more, because the conscious mind has given up control in a very, very large way, and you can make huge changes. And then the final thing I'll say, I'm just kind of motor mouthing here because I love talking about it, is we'll then, after that week, we then do a minimum of 2 sessions a week afterwards for at least a month to absolutely make sure that they integrate what they got. Because at the end of the day, they can have these wonderful realizations, revelations, everything can shift for them, and then they go back to their normal life and they don't act upon them, and they don't continue that thought process, and they just go back to who they were, and it was just a waste of a week, which is the exact opposite of what we want here.
Well, nothing in micro, macro, everything. What's one of the things I say that's stupid is like nothing in moderation.
Thing is, I absolutely love the concept of microdosing when it comes to psilocybin. It's one of the most powerful things I know. It's a very different experience. But what you can do is when you microdose and you go through your normal day, which is very different than when you macrodose, possibly throwing up. We're talking through the whole process. When you microdose and you go through your day, your brain is just that much more open and suggestible and that much more creative. And if it's done right in a microdose, you can actually have the person start thinking through things that they usually get stuck on in a new way. So the way I like to think about microdosing is it's very, very powerful to get a person past the blocks that they always have in their minds consciously. So their mind is creative enough that they can kind of like see over the wall, see around it, or just realize that the wall didn't belong there in the first place. And so I love microdosing, but it needs to be done in the right way with the right intention. And again, always with the right integration after the fact.
And that's kind of the big theme, right? Is the follow up and the integration after the fact. And we've spoke about this a little bit before when it comes to really anything, whether it's a meditation practice or anything else, or any type of medication or any type of therapy. Is it doesn't matter how good you feel in the moment, so to speak, no matter what it is, whether it's a hypnosis session or something else. If you don't follow up, like you said, you waste.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about,
Yeah.
about the ayahuasca retreats. Like people come back, oh my God, it's a revelation. It's going to change my whole goddamn life. And then 2 weeks later, they're doing the same thing again because they didn't change anything when they came home.
That's it. And the thing is, after the ayahuasca retreat or after the psilocybin or something else, you are on this absolute high, and you're so manic because I mean, it releases a bunch of serotonin in your system. You're feeling absolutely wonderful, and you're convinced that your life is changed forever. You are now the new Jesus Christ, the new Moses, whatever it is, and you now know how to change the world. But then you go home and your wife still looks at you in the funny way, and your children still annoy you, and your parents still ask you to come visit when you didn't want to or whatever it is. And what happens is, because you don't have the right form of integration, you come back down to your normal life. And so the real thought is, a realization in a vacuum is never going to get anywhere. You have to become a person for whom that realization becomes a natural way of thinking. You have to break your default mode network. You have to get out of the default.
Yeah. And this happens in everyday life too, because people go on vacation and you're like, I'm going to start a diet. Like you have all these revelations when you're just out of your environment. Not even, I'm not talking about having any type of treatments or anything else. Just going somewhere for a week and like, that's it. I got it. I got all my ideas now. Then you get back into your daily grind and like, I'll get to it later. Like it never changes. But I do like the spectrum that psilocybin or that the treatments provide, all the way from microdosing to macrodosing, whatever labels we want to put on that. I do like the fact that it can be useful to certain people in a micro dose level, and then of course on the macro side of things. And I've heard that years and years of meditation can get people there. I know Sam Harris talks about this a lot, where it's like psilocybin, or I forget what he took the first time around, but it's like it was just
I don't remember.
it got him there.
He's very big on MDMA. Just
Essentially, it like you can get to some of these things, some of these places after a lot of meditation and probably zero distraction, which is just not feasible for the modern human, just with all the distractions of the world that we live in now. Or you can do some type of a therapy like you're talking about and possibly get there overnight, or at least it jumpstarts a freight train into your consciousness,
And that's a challenge. I mean, the concept of it's not reasonable for the modern human is probably one of the biggest reasons why so many people stay stuck. It's at the end of the day, you have to become that new person, whether it is doing daily meditation or whether it is changing your environment around you to suit that new person you become. I love waking up at 9, 10, 11 a.m. That is my thing. But every morning now, I'm waking up at between 4 and 5:30, usually 5:30 to be quite honest, and doing my meditation because it became a very important part of my life. And I realized that when I do it, I am a better person for the rest of the day after doing those things. So I get the fact that it's not necessarily always feasible for the modern person, but I also say there's that saying you should meditate for an hour a day unless you're extremely stressed and busy, in which case you should meditate for 2. And I love that concept because at the end of the day, this is the thing that's really, really, really going to shift you. And the other one saying that I really love about this is, and this is just going back to the whole thing, is just it's the difference between and I got this from a silly show, but it's the difference between being a tourist and a resident. And what I mean by that is if you go off and you do some kind of psychedelic or even come and see me and do one session and you think that that's going to change you, you're a tourist. You went in, you got the big dose of the amazing city and you're your eyes are big and wide. But the thing that's going to really change you is becoming a resident in that new life of yours. You absolutely you can't just step into the new life and you might bring back a revelation or two, but the real change that happens is when you become the new person.
So what I do is I try to meditate mid-afternoon, which leads to a nap usually, which is fine because I actually feel much better. Yeah, I fall asleep because I listen to Sam Harris's Waking Up app, and he's like, find a comfortable seat. And I'm like, well, I'm laying down, but which I know I'm going to pay for in a couple of weeks because I won't have that opportunity. I'll be on my little mat that I buy. You should see all the fancy stuff I bought for this retreat. I've got a nice little.
I'm actually curious to see
cushion.
it. You should probably share it with the viewers at one of our shows just so they can see
I'll
what
bring
you
it
bought
over.
for it.
Yeah, I went online. I bought like a little cushion because I was. There's a lot of things I'm okay being uncomfortable with, and I'm like, that's a lot of sitting, So this is off topic, but my retreat on the packing list. It's a little bit different from yours. Same group, same teacher, same everything,
Hmm.
but a little bit different facilitators or whatever. And they said they do not provide those things. So anyway, well, I mean, so I meditate in the afternoon, and I typically fall asleep for a little bit of a nap. I'm one of those people that can nap and kind of bounce up and be okay sometimes. But I've never tried it in the morning. So what you're saying is you get up, you wake up, and it could be dark still. You're just kind of laying
Oh, it's
there.
dark. But now
Yeah.
here's the thing that you absolutely have to do. It's like, I mean, if you stay laying down, that is what your mind is already conditioned with where you go to sleep. So you specifically either have to sit up in bed or ideally go to a completely different spot in your house or wherever it is that is your meditation location, that you don't allow yourself to go to sleep.
Okay.
And you have to actually force yourself to not let yourself go back into that sleep state. So the Joe Dispenza's words, and I absolutely love them, is body asleep, mind awake is what you want. So you want your body to be completely relaxed, but your mind is really laser focused as much as possible. And you're actually focusing it. It's not going off on its crazy daydreams or whatever it is. You're focused in on what it is that you're getting. Laying down to meditate could possibly be counterproductive. For some people, they can do it. Today, I did his Zen meditation where he has you laying down, but every roughly 5 minutes, he has you do a very intense breathing technique to force you to stay awake and to hyperoxygenate yourself so you actually can't fall asleep so easily. And then, like, you start drifting away again. It's like, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And so you want to make sure you do whatever it is to force your brain to stay awake so you actually get into that right state.
This is good to hear, and I think this will be useful for people as well, because this is what I've been doing wrong, right? I wake up sometimes, I'm like, I'm going to meditate now, and I'll reach for the phone, one eye open still, kind of in that state where, and I'm a slow waker. I don't know why. Like I used to be able to,
Oh,
well,
me
it's
too.
age. I used to be able to spring out of bed, especially back in my law enforcement days. We get a call with a warrant somewhere, and I had all my stuff laid out in the at the foot of the bed like a firefighter would, where I could just pull my pants on and my holster, all my stuff's right there, and I'd be out the door with my boots untied in my car, turn on the lights and siren, and fly out of Victoria Park, where I used to live in Fort Lauderdale, to wherever I needed to go. And I was like, I'm awake now. I was in my 20s also, but now I could walk around the house for 45 minutes and I don't know what's going on now. So, but this is interesting because in the past, when I tried to meditate in the morning, and what kind of turned me off to it is I was just doing it wrong. I was like, I'm going to lay here, and it just didn't feel right. So what you're saying is you get up, even though you may not be fully like awake, you're like, I'm getting up, I'm going to zombie my way to my little meditation area, and then you go through with it. So that actually makes a lot more sense. And now, so when you do that, you find that comparatively, like to a day where you don't do that in the morning, is there a noticeable difference?
I can't think of a day in like the last, I don't know, multiple years that I don't meditate at some point in time. There's definitely been days I haven't meditated first thing in the morning, but most days I do meditate. And it's one of those things that once you actually change your life to some degree, you can miss a day and it's not going to be the worst thing in the world for you. So like I can't say that like a day I don't meditate is like a bad day for me, but a day that I have a good meditation, and specifically a good meditation that my brain goes to something wonderful, or I just have a really amazing whatever kind of mystical experience. And it's, I mean, it's, I'm not one of those. I've never astral traveled or anything like that like so many meditators do, but just like a really good experience that you feel like that is something very, very unique that only occurred during the meditative state. When I have one of those, my day is definitely on steroids. It's just like it's a beautiful day. The colors are brighter. I'm happier. I'm happier around people. And what I believe happens in that moment, it's like it's not necessarily just the meditative experience itself. It's the fact that in that meditative experience, your brain actually produced a certain set of chemicals that makes you have a better day. It's not just necessarily I just had a great experience, blah blah blah. Your brain released a bunch of serotonin, a bunch of endorphins, a bunch of really great things, and you carry those through into the rest of the day with you.
That's good to hear because it's something to look forward to. I'm not there yet, but I can imagine like starting like they say, like that stupid, like, did you get off on the wrong side of the bed today, or starting your day on the right, whatever saying we want to put
Yeah.
on it. I could see where that'd be very, very helpful. So that's definitely something I
And
want to start trying, is first thing in the morning and trying to get something in. And I'm a very novice meditator now, which is why I'm going to be
it's
forced
going to
into
be
it here.
very interesting, yeah. And so the
Yeah.
one thing I'll say is, I mean, it's for you, it's what they do is at the Vipassana retreat, they start meditating at 4 a.m. Someone comes around with a cowbell around all the different things, or at least they did at mine. I'm assuming it's going to be the same at yours.
Um,
They ding the cowbell and it's time for you to wake up. And your choices at that moment between 4 and I think it's 6:30 a.m. or between 4 and 7 a.m. You can choose to meditate in your bed or go into the meditation hall. And I'm going to implore you to actually go into the meditation hall, to actually get your butt out of bed, hate yourself in that moment, and just go sit in the meditation hall and do your meditation. It's just, I did it every day for those 10 days because I knew that if I was going to lay in bed, my brain just isn't that strong. Like, however much I like to say, you know what, like it's I do everything right, blah, blah, blah. I'd meditate for the first 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden I'd start like having a daydream about whatever it was, candy, ice cream, whatever the heck it is, and I'm gone. It's like it's so easy to slip into that very razor's edge between sleep and meditation. And so
Yeah.
when you wake yourself up and walk and sit, it's going to be that much harder to do. And that's why a lot of meditators, weirdly enough, actually choose an uncomfortable position to meditate in. You actually want to do something to keep the body to some degree aware that it's not the right time to sleep, somewhat uncomfortable, somewhat different for you, so it actually does it.
Yeah.
And then one more thing I'm going to say about the sleep and meditation paradox is the other thing that I do that's been really, really powerful for me, and I really do a lot with my clients, is when I do sleep, I love sleeping with affirmations. So my logic is when you're asleep, your brain is still functioning. It's
Mhm.
still doing everything that it normally does. It's just doing it in REM sleep, and it's just processing different information. What a great time to shove a very specific set of thoughts into your head. So I just absolutely love it. Like it sometimes affects my dreams. I love it when it does, when I'm just like asleep and I hear an affirmation of, it's like I'm strong and confident and I don't know why, but I have this wonderful dream that I feel like I'm 40 foot tall and bulletproof kind of thing. It's like,
Yeah.
so there are things you can do in your sleep too. If you just are prone towards sleep over meditation, then put on earphones or right now they even make pillows that have a speaker inside of them, and you can sleep on your pillow, and while you're asleep, put some good thoughts in your brain. It's like it's back to that thing that we said in our last podcast of your unconscious mind is always eavesdropping. So if it's
Yeah.
always eavesdropping, always 100% of the time, 24/7, 365, why wouldn't you use every moment you have to kind of like just shove in a few more good thoughts? Like, why the heck not? And it's like and other people will look at me and they'll say like, well, why do you think you're so broken that you need to basically always be shoving these thoughts into your brain? And the answer I'm going to have for that is it's not the fact that I'm broken. It's very simply the fact that, like, if my brain is always going to be paying attention to things, I'm going to choose what I'm going to be putting into it in the first place. It's not a matter of I need to fix something. It's a matter of I'm going to choose my destination. I'm going to do everything in my power to get to that destination.
Yeah. No, I love this. So what you're saying is I shouldn't be listening to my Stephen King audiobooks when I fall asleep at
Oh
night.
dear Lord.
Probably
It's
not
like,
helping
I
at all.
mean, I, I barely even listen to the news anymore. Like, I mean, like
Yeah.
my brother came to visit 2 months ago, and he was like asking me questions about like current affairs, and I was like, oh shit, that's really happening. It's just like
Yeah.
I'm kind of disconnected, which isn't necessarily a good thing. But again, like if the brain is always eavesdropping, why do you want to know about the crime and rape and mortality rate in your country as opposed to actually choosing what to listen to? If you're gonna be reading a book, I mean, do some kind of a crime thriller if that does it for you, but do something that on some level has some kind of a good message associated with it or something like that that actually pulls you in the right direction.
I've been doing it wrong. I've been napping during my meditations, and I've been listening to. I don't listen to Stephen King at night, but I do have some certain podcasts. And there's a good book by Andrew Solomon called The Noonday Demon. I was listening to. It's about depression. Very,
Interesting.
very intense because he went through a lot of treatment, and so I'm always interested in mental health and everything else, of course. And I'm like, this is a very intense book. But yeah, some of it got real dark because a lot of it was about suicide and everything else. So
So,
anyway, I'm listening to that at night as I'm going to
so,
sleep. But it was
so
yeah.
let me ask you a couple of questions about that. Like, did you
Mhm.
have any weird dreams based upon that?
I don't think so,
Okay.
that I can recall, and I usually remember my dreams. Oddly enough, I dream mostly about, and we could keep this in or cut it out depending upon how much people want to go, because we will get back to I really want to go in depth on the whole start to finish Jamaican psilocybin thing, because as I know
Okay.
we talked about it a little bit in episode 1 or 2, but I think people would love to hear like, hey, what am I in for if I do something like this? But you know what I dream about? I dream about combat, like, but not combat in the sense of like back when I was in the military or anything like that. I dream about being in like we're at a shopping mall or something, there's a hostage situation and I have to like take somebody's gun and like, like scenarios that I have not actually been in. And I don't know what that's from because like anybody else, I watch a lot of TV at night. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. I watch a little bit here and there, and I have all my shows. I like some of it. I watch, law enforcement shows and military shows because they're everywhere. But I don't necessarily, I'll watch Star Trek and everything else. I watch sci-fi. You know what I mean? So it's just weird.
Yeah.
Sure to me when I
So
wake up in the morning, I'm like, that's really strange. So it's almost like, and I think some of it maybe even all these years later. I'll go into a public place, and I don't even take a gun with me anymore. Most things I used to have 3 on me all the time, and now I'll go somewhere because I have felt that sense of responsibility before. If something were to happen in this restaurant, like I have to help these people, I have to save these people. I don't even. I'm not saying I wouldn't help anymore. I don't have
of
all those
course.
guns on me anymore. But I think that my brain still subconsciously runs through scenarios when I go into public places, and even if I'm not thinking about it, like okay, we just walked into the shopping mall or Walmart or something. If something happens in here, this is what I'm going to do. I don't remember having those thoughts, and then at night I dream about stuff like that. So there's probably something from that's been imprinted on me because that was a long time, man. That was 20 years between the Marine Corps and then my government job, where like all day long I was like, what do I do if something happens right now? So yeah, I can't explain that shit. But
At the Joe Dispenza retreat I was just at, we actually met a woman that had just retired from the police force.
Mhm.
And so we became friends. So we used to have lunch together. And so as we go out for lunch, we'd sit down for lunch, and she would always sit facing the front door
Mhm.
because that was just what she was trained to do as a cop, like the whole time, in terms of like she always needs to be aware of where the threats are. She would always case out the room, kind of like sit in a corner so she knows that there's nothing behind her or whatever it is. And this was just her training. And it's to me like there's nothing wrong with that training, but for her at least, it definitely came along with some level of anxiety associated with it.
Sure.
And that is where the issue comes along. Like I mean,
Yeah.
like if you're trained to do something, I have no problem. Like an Olympic athlete knows how to run 100 meters better than anyone else, or knows how to look for balls moving in a certain direction. Their brain is specifically wired to do it. And that's perfectly fine. But if that is also associated with an element of anxiety or stress or something else, that is what needs to be removed from you. And
Yeah.
so, what I would say for you, for example, is you're probably not aware of it, but like, I mean, while you're dreaming, your brain is obviously still having a conversation. It's just the way the brain works. So, while you're dreaming and you're imagining these different scenarios, your brain is probably having a conversation along the lines of, oh, and then I would do this, and oh, it's okay, I would be in control, or whatever it is. Now, imagine at the same time you're listening to that book, The Noonday Demon. What
Yeah.
happens is you've got this dream of you disarming someone, and you pick up a gun, and all of a sudden you hear, God forbid, I don't want to program this into your mind, and like I know this is the way it works, but like I mean, like you hear, and I was holding that gun and fantasizing of killing myself or whatever it
Mhm.
is, and all of a sudden your brain hears that while it's in your dream you're holding a gun, and now
Yeah.
your brain goes off on this really weird direction. So
Yeah. Yeah.
wouldn't it be just slightly better of in that moment that if you're already going to be having these dreams, you have things of like just a voice in the back of your head? And I very often record my own affirmation, not very often, I almost always record my own affirmations. So it's even in my own voice where I would say something like, I feel safe and in control. It's my life is created by my design or whatever it is. It's like, and I'm just making these up on the fly.
Mhm.
But imagine in that moment, as you're going through that experience, that you're actually reiterating into your brain in that moment of like, God, I really do know how to control all these weird situations. Or maybe that's the affirmation you need. Like, it's like,
Yeah. Maybe.
I'm so much more powerful than I gave myself credit for.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine. So if you're really going to have those dreams, let your brain hear those extra words and let your brain start making new connections for you because it's always eavesdropping. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. I mean, it will happen overnight, but not over one night.
Yeah. Right.
But like,
Right.
it's something that like, it's over the course of a certain period of time, your brain is going to start making these connections of like, you're just going to like find that your next dream, you're going to have this thought of like, you know what? I really am more in control than I thought I was, or I really have a lot more control over my life than I thought. And then that's going to start flooding through into your everyday life. So it's just the idea is if you know that you've got a certain recurring dream, use it. If you don't know you have a certain recurring dream, but you have a certain recurring thought in your day-to-day life, then program yourself away from it. And there's a certain way of doing it, but program yourself away from it and into the thought pattern you'd much rather have. And use your sleep as a very powerful tool of transformation.
It's hard to quantify these things, I'm sure. But so you've been doing this for X amount of time. Have you noticed? Is it even possible to notice? Like, let's say you go for a couple nights and you don't have that going on, or is it so like subconscious, like, you know what I mean? That you can't wake up one morning and be like, I didn't have my affirmations last night.
It's one of those things that when I do it, it feels really great, but when I don't do it, it's like I just have normal sleep. And like sometimes, very often, like the affirmations to some degree do manage to keep me awake to some degree. So
Sure.
sometimes like I'll do it like for 5 nights in a row and then specifically not do it for another 4 nights because I'll find I wake up slightly more tired if I did my affirmations. But
Okay.
I've been
Yeah.
doing this since like 2000 and nothing, pretty much like 2000 or 2001 or something like that. And that just started off with me just recording things onto my computer and making them into, I think at that point in
CDs
time it
and
was
burning
burning CDs. I think that that's, or
CDs
maybe my
or whatever,
iPod,
my
if
thumb
that's where
drives.
it
Yeah.
was back then, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Who
It's,
knows?
but like
Yeah.
it's, was iPod even around? It's whatever it was, but
I
like I mean like its technology's definitely gotten so weird. I mean at this point in time, like I mean if anyone's listening, you don't need me to do this for you. Pull up your freaking phone. 99% of phones have some kind of voice recorder app.
yeah.
Write down specific statements for yourself that are very future oriented. You don't want to say something like I am. I'm trying to think of like a specific
Sure.
affirmation that wouldn't be good, but like let me rather just say specific affirmations that are good as opposed to me just sitting here bumbling a little bit. But like basically, you want to say something along the lines of I'm always in control of my life, or it's perhaps that one might be your brain might say bullshit to some degree, or something like I can always take a better action, and you're
Mhm.
starting to create something that is possible. Record that into your phone, get it on an MP3, put it on YouTube Music or whatever playlist you use, put on some music in the background, and push play and put it on repeat and go to sleep. It's
Yeah.
not the hardest thing in the world nowadays.
There's AI voice stuff, so I would bet that you could even program your voice into something and then use the ChatGPT or one of the platforms and say, "Hey, give me 1,000 affirmations in sequence," and just let it, you know, let it talk to you there.
100%.
Their problems don't
100%.
take 5 minutes to do all that. Yeah.
I've actually been working on exactly that program. It's just like, I mean, it's something I've been like, it's just been a passion project. So I haven't given it exactly that amount of attention that it needs, but exactly that program where you actually have different AI voices talking to you, etc.
Yeah. No, I love
But
that. Yeah.
yeah,
And this is good for people to hear too. You know, okay, when am I going to be? I don't want to say the word fixed, but when am I going to arrive? When am I going to start? Is there an end to all this? And hearing from somebody like you, who's a professional in the field, but you're still doing it every day. Like you still do these things for yourself. You're trying new things. I know that you're always experimenting with new different types of treatments. So it's good for people to hear, like, hey, you know, the guy who, you know, should know everything and should be fixed. He should be perfect. He's like, no, I still have to go through these things. I still have to do my daily meditations, my affirmations. Like you still follow your process, and that's really important for people to hear because it's, you know, it's an ongoing thing.
and
It's a practice,
yeah.
so to speak. It's a to the day you die, you'll probably be doing some form of self-care treatment. It's never going to end.
Percent. And but the thing I'll say is like when I was like probably like 14, 15, and I had my larger issues with self-esteem and self-confidence, I was doing it to fix myself. And
Hmm.
that was perhaps one of the worst things I was ever doing because the moment you fix yourself, you're always the larger belief there is there's something about me that needs to be fixed. The thing that I love about where I got to over time, and it was a process, and this is what I'm trying to shorten for people as much as possible, is now I'm just improving myself. It's, I mean, the reason why we chose the name of our foundation to be Human Evolution Movement, it's
Hmm.
not the human fixing movement. The idea is you want to evolve yourself to the greatest, grandest version of yourself. And the beauty of that is, regardless how far you go, there's always more room for more evolution, more love, more joy, more peace, more happiness in your life. And so it's, I mean, why would I ever stop? You know, it's like, I mean, there's just such amazing things out there, and we're in such a profoundly amazing time in history that there's so many new technologies showing up literally every day that are changing people's lives. It's like it's so like it's I want to be on the cutting edge of this to find out what else is out there, and I want to play around with it, get to know it, and then share it with people as much as possible.
Well, it's like physical exercise too, right? It's not like you just, I'm going to work out. This is why diets fail. I'm going to work out, and then when I lose all the weight, I'm done. I don't have to diet or exercise anymore. Same thing. Like you just have to keep going. Like you can obviously work out harder for a while to get to where you want to
Of
be and
course,
how you want to feel. And then, but you still have to maintain that. You can't just stop, you know? So
exactly.
same concept. But I guess, so I kind of bringing it back to the whole, the treatment that you do. And again, it's out of country right now. It's in Jamaica. And hopefully over time, as things loosen up and get we get more approvals and the government's a little more lax, or I don't want to say the word lax, maybe. Once the government gets a little bit more, licenses are given out, things like that. Things are more accepted in mainstream. And I'm not sure where everything stands now. I know there's some bills in Congress to legalize psilocybin, but I know sometimes it's state by state. So I'm not sure where we
Yeah.
land on all
So,
that.
so as of this recording, like for example, I know for example, Oregon has now allowed for psilocybin assisted therapy, and certain counties, I don't even think states, have decriminalized it. So, for example, I think Oakland in California and Denver in Colorado have decriminalized the use of mushrooms. But at the same time, even though it's decriminalized, it's not completely legal yet. Whereas the beauty of
Mhm.
Jamaica, the reason why I love it so much is it's part of their culture. It's completely legal. It's just one of those things. And the thing I love about that is just a couple of days ago, I was talking to a friend that's working on becoming a psychedelic integrator.
Mhm.
And she was just telling me these crazy stories of a person going to see this quote unquote shaman who was basically giving them a messed up cocktail and then doing things to them sexually while they were affected, or just had completely different agendas with them while the person was under that influence. Or perhaps even another thing that can very often happen is, let's just say a person takes some kind of psychedelic substance and has a really, really bad trip and you want to call 911. Now, if you're in America, you actually have to go through that thought of, well, if I call 911, am I going to be arrested because I was doing something illegal? But this person really needs help. So what am I going to do in this moment? In
Yeah.
Jamaica, I have a medical worker there present the whole time. I have a person that is the same sex as the person that's being worked on there the whole time. And so and at any point in time, the person says, I need an ambulance. Obviously, we're going to work through it and make sure that that's a real truth. And thank
Right.
God it's never happened. But call the ambulance, they come pick them up, and everything is good. It's not that big a deal when you're dealing with it in a legal jurisdiction. And so because it's illegal, you have these people capable of doing things that a person can't really complain about because they were doing something illegal. And you also have the problem that the person that's facilitating it is sometimes afraid to reach out for help if they really need it, because what is that going to mean for them?
I wonder how many people have died through overdosing or just an adverse reaction to things over the years because everybody's at a party, and I'm not just talking about psilocybin, I'm talking about all the other
Yeah,
things too, where they're like, so they're over here foaming at the mouth, but I'm not calling it, and then 20 minutes goes by and somebody's like, okay, I'm going to call now. Well, too late. I
too
can
late.
imagine. I could totally
Sadly
see
true.
that playing out. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a shame. But so when people, come to you, and obviously, we talked about this before, where you decide if they're a good fit for the treatment. Now, obviously, a travel arrangements have to be made. We don't have to get into every little detail with the logistics, but I imagine you have a package in place that kind of facilitates that entire thing to get the
Exactly.
ball rolling, and then you have to set dates. Like, what does that generally look like? How long does it take to go from you're a good candidate to actually making it happen?
It's just based upon my schedule. It's usually going to be about 2 months until we actually get to at least 2 months. I mean, it could be between 2 and 6 months, whatever that number is. And I actually like that gap because during that time, what I want to do is I want to keep working with them, make sure that they completely have a strong trust in me, and at the same time know enough of the work that I do so we actually can continue doing it while they're under the psychedelic substance. I don't want a person coming off the street saying, "Hey, Ori, do psychedelics with me." They don't have a clue of what I do. They just kind of like want the psychedelic experience. And I start doing work with them, and they're like, "This isn't what I was expecting." By the time that a person works with me under with the psychedelic substance, I want them to know exactly what's coming. I want them to know exactly what my intentions are and how we're going to get them through it. And so we use those 2 months in a very powerful way to kind of like pre-frame everything that's going to be happening and make sure that we develop the right kind of relationship.
I could see that being comforting for, like you said, for all parties. Like this is what's going to
Yeah,
happen. It's not like, hey, we're leaving tomorrow. Go pack your shit. We're flying out tomorrow, kind of
exactly.
thing. So okay, so you get down there. I imagine you have your place that you go to that you probably return to. I'm sure. So I'm just asking questions
So
based on what I would ask. Like, so we fly down and. I know there's all costs associated with all these things. Now, is there like a specific resort setting? Like, do I check into something and then I meet you at a facility? How does that all play out?
no, so I mean, the beauty of Jamaica is that we really, I do it in Airbnb.
Good.
Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
I
that
like
kind
it.
of thing. It's like, I mean, we definitely want to do it in Airbnb that's somewhat, slightly a bit more remote kind of thing.
Sure.
So we don't necessarily have the person because, I mean, there will be to some degree, we are going to be releasing emotions. You are probably going to be screaming. I'm not saying that that always happens, but The vast
Yeah.
majority of the times it does happen, and I want you to feel completely comfortable doing it. The whole idea is the godfather of the psychedelic movement as such, the guy that really started, and what he started was something called holotropic breathwork, if you're familiar with it, Stan Grof. He spoke about the two important things to have the right kind of experience for a person, and he called it set and setting. So basically, you want to have the correct mindset, so you know exactly what it is you're doing, and you move in that direction. So it's not like, oh gosh, we're doing this to have fun and go off and experience what the psychedelic state is about. We set a very specific intention. This is what I want to work on. This is how I'm going to get there. And before we even take the psychedelic substance that morning, we will have like at least a 30-minute conversation to follow up probably from the conversation the night before, where we actually say, okay, fine. So based upon this, tell me what's going on for you now. Okay, fine. So now you're feeling this. So I might even do a small session with them before we start. And then I say, okay, fine. So for today, let's set the intention to go here. If we don't go there, that's fine. But this is our intention. So at least you've got the right mindset. And then the other part of it is setting, where what I want to do is make sure that you feel as completely comfortable as possible. So if you have any kind of issues around medical issues, we're doing it in Jamaica where we can always call 911. There'll be medical staff available for you. If you have any kind of problem with the fact that it's only me, we have an extra facilitator there that will be opposite sex that can always be there, say, for you in that way. And we obviously create a certain set of rules ahead of time. Like, for example, you're allowed to do anything you want. I don't really care. You're not allowed to hurt myself. You're not allowed to hurt anyone else, are the two rules I will always tell a person. So there are certain ground rules that we stick to in order to make sure that the person has what they need. And from that point forth, you want to scream, scream. It's like we were talking about this yesterday when we were in our previous podcast when we were talking about the body release stuff. It's the craziest thing in the world that you'll see a person actually kind of like have like tremors, and you can see their body releasing years of stored trauma inside the body when they're at this high level of psychedelics and they finally get to that place of feeling safe enough inside of themselves. But like, I mean, if you were to look at that from the outside, you're seeing a person basically having like what looks like a very traumatic seizure. It's like, it's very intense. It is insanely intense. And so like, it's at this point in time, like it's in order to make it a bit less intense for people, I call it the zombie shakes, because I'd say probably 70% of people that do high dose psychedelics will have it. So it's a pretty common thing. So I just tell them, you're going to experience the zombie shakes. Very possibly it's what's going to happen. But like the whole idea is that they need to know that this is going to happen, that they're going to be shaking, that there's a mat on the floor or there's a towel or a blanket on the floor in which that they can do it. You might throw up if a lot of emotions come up for you. There's a trash can right here. This is exactly what it's about. It's like it's at any point in time, just reach out for me and I'm right here. So as long as you have all these different things set up, people have a very comfortable experience, and you basically want to set them up to succeed, and that was what it boils down to.
Yeah, I like that. I can imagine just being in a room like, okay, there's the bed, there's a towel, there's a mat on the floor, there's the trash can, there's a bat and a piñata over there if you want to go release something, you can go whack at that for a while. But you know what I mean? Like going into it, that would be what I would want. I'm like, okay, I got everything in this room that I would need for, to feel comfortable. And you said, now that's how many days? I think you said before, is it 4 days?
So my ideal, and obviously it depends on the person, what they need and exactly what's going on for them, but my ideal is actually 7 days, of which
Okay.
5 of those days will be psychedelic. And so it's sometimes like just the first day is a bit of just getting acquainted to whatever it is, etc. Then we'll set everything up. Then we'll do. It depends on if they've done psychedelics before, etc. Obviously, there's a whole questionnaire that the person goes through ahead of time to make sure exactly that we don't like. You've never done psychedelics before. Here's 15 grams of psilocybin. Have a nice day. Bye.
Yeah.
But like the first day is going to be what would basically call a ramping up process to like basically get them acquainted with what's going on with me, with the whole process, whatever it is. That night we will process whatever happened for them that night, and it's just me and them going through stuff. My idea is I want them to get sick of me because I'm not going to stop questioning them. What's going on for you? How's it going? What's happening? The second day we go harder into whatever things happen, and the whole idea at that point in time is we kind of want to get the person to the point that they give up. So after the first day, they get mentally challenged. They're just kind of like drained. And the second day, because they're so drained, their fight instinct in them weakens down. And when you give them the psychedelics that second time, and then you start putting new thoughts into their head, they just don't have the same capacity to fight those thoughts anymore. And you get a very powerful thing. And then depending on how the second day goes, we would either go into the third day or give them a day of rest. And then from there, we would do 2 more days and then 1 day of rest, and then it's over. I mean, some people can choose to stay 10 days, whatever it is, and just get some time of integration, whatever works for them in that way. But with me, it would be about 7 days.
Just wearing down that resistance, I guess, over the first day or so. And then now, so that psychedelics are taken in the morning, I imagine. So then
Yeah.
at what point, like I imagine every day, because I've done them before, but I know that they wear off. So like, let's say like day one, for example, you give somebody their first dose of it, and then you get, whatever work needs to be done that day. Now, they come out of it at some point. And in other words, it's not like one of my 4-day drinking benders where I'm still drunk in the morning and I just keep drinking champagne. Like it does wear off and you go back to sleep, or do the effects roll over?
The effects roll over. It's really interesting. So
Okay.
within about like 6 to 8 hours, it really depends. Let's say 4 to 8 hours. It really depends on how the body metabolizes the psilocybin. The actual quote unquote trip stops. But that person is still in a very, very affected state because, I mean, we are dealing with high dose psychedelics here. And so for the rest of the day, their brain is still thinking through things. And I want them to not touch their phone. I don't want them to be looking online. I want them to be at most journaling or listening to affirmations and actually continuing the integration process of what's happening. 99% of people are going to have very unique, weird dreams that night where they get, visited by God or aliens or whatever it is. And then the next morning when they take the psilocybin again, they go back into the actual seeing the geometric shapes, etc. It continues it. And by the end of the second time that you take it, the rest of that day on day two, you're going to be normal, but like you are still very much under the influence of psychedelics. And so we use that in a very powerful way to make sure that we lock in things while we actually can talk, and you're not seeing the walls melt around you or whatever it is. It's a very powerful thing to actually just use the power of the psychedelics. To me, it would almost be the equivalent, and it's actually more powerful, but it would almost be the equivalent of a microdose at that point for the rest of the day.
You mentioned you try to keep people from distraction. So like they, obviously I'm sure there's means to communicate with the outside world and everything, but like
Yeah,
really
if they
when
want
somebody
to,
comes
of course.
down and goes into this, the idea would be like, hey, clear your calendar, make sure you don't have to have anything,
Oh God, yeah.
because it's not like, hey, I'll go check these emails for a couple of hours. Like you want them to be fully immersed in the experience, even if they feel okay. You don't want them,
Now, of
checking on
course,
other
like I
things.
mean, like it's they want to reach out to their family members and tell them that they're okay. That makes perfect sense. If they have to respond to 1 or 2 emails, respond to 1 or 2 emails. It's not like there's no prison going on here, right?
Right,
But like it's when it's all said and done, like you really want the person to be focusing in on themselves. And the thing is, like, I mean, because that this is so intense, this isn't the kind of thing that a person does because they just want to experience psychedelics. This is really when a person has tried everything else and the doctor has given them the stage 4 cancer diagnosis kind of thing. And so like they are very committed to make this change. And so at that point in time, it's like, do you really want to sit there and pay attention to what's going on at work? And if it is, I want to find out why it is that work is so important to you. What are those beliefs you're holding on to that make you feel so unimportant that you can focus in on yourself right now? And and that actually tells me a lot about the person. But like it's if you have to check a couple of emails, I do too, whatever it is, that's fine. Obviously reach out to your family members, tell them everything is okay. I want you to feel as safe and comfortable as possible, but at the end of the day, these are 7 days you took out of your life that, if done right, should really rank as probably number one as the most transformative experience of your whole entire life. I mean, you're talking about 7 days of intense psychedelic work with a person that is not focused on anyone else but you for those whole 7 days.
I would imagine that you're right about people who have the compulsion to have to check on external things. There's probably a whole underlying thing there that needs to be addressed as well. So I could see most of the population having that problem, actually. I could all stand for a little bit of treatment there. But what does the wind down look like? So you're a couple days in, like the most intensive stuff happens the first few days, like you mentioned before, with the integration and preparing them to come back to the real world, quote unquote, wherever they're from. And then you plan to see them after that or schedule things, to
Yes.
have like regular treatments after that. But the last few days there, does the dosage, do you kind of lower that and go into like a different thing? How does that work? You crank it
That
up,
would
you
be a
crank it up
very,
even more.
as long as you're with me, we are doing work. It's like there is no wind down.
Yeah,
It's if there's 4 sessions of psychedelics, there's 4 sessions of psychedelics. We're not
nice.
doing 2.5 here. It's like, I
Okay.
mean, there's definitely a ramp up, but I wouldn't say that there's a wind down in terms of the amount of psychedelics. But what we do is, at least for one day afterwards, we're clearing up your system. We definitely want you to have a healthy diet throughout, which is another thing. You're not responsible for cooking. It's Jamaica. We can hire someone to actually help with
Oh
the
yeah.
cooking, etc.
Oh,
And
jerk
so
chicken and
you're
everything. That'd be
eating.
great.
It's. I
Maybe
mean,
not.
I know you said that as a joke, but like it's. I mean,
Good.
it's very, very interesting. I mean, you give a person jerk chicken when they take this level of psychedelics, and you're gonna have quite amount of puking happening the very next
Ah,
day.
no. Damn it.
So it's the person. It's an interesting thing. Like I mean, if they want to eat it, it's. I would recommend them against it, but again, it's I'm not a warden
Mm,
here. I'll let you do whatever the heck you want, but I'm going to strongly recommend a person does not do those kinds of things.
yeah.
But what ends up happening when you take these kinds of psychedelics is you tend to actually want something light. Your body is so focused in on healing at that moment that the last thing you want is to just have something very, very intense.
Yeah.
But then move on to like the last day, and we're actually going to ramp up the food a bit too, because we want you to actually kind of like get back down to earth to some level. Like, I mean, like you've been up in the clouds for like the last 5, 6 days. So that last day, we will actually include something. It may not be jerk chicken, but it will definitely be some level of more substantial food that you actually want your body to feel back to normal again. And then it's after that, like I don't really give a diet to follow once you get back. But you'll really start listening to your body a lot more after that period in time, and you're going to just slowly ramp yourself back into like normal life or change it completely based upon what your decisions are. And we will keep working through the different things that happen.
Yeah. The last day or two, I mean, obviously you have to like, like, hey, to go to the airport, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm joking a little bit about it, but you want to make sure that like, hey, I feel great, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to go make a scene somewhere. You want to have that whole process, like
For
that
sure.
wind down shit through that. I'd be like, okay, well, let's do this for the week. Then I'm going to spend another week at one of the resorts since we're down here, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So, because that
And
would
that's
be
a great thing
ideal,
to
I
do.
think, is just let it. Yeah, like I would think, because who wants to come back after an experience like that? And I know some people don't have the time, but yeah, I mean, I would imagine like the beautiful thing to do would be go through that, and then take some time for yourself or whatever, and go sit on the beach for a week, if in so much as that's possible for some people's
If it's
schedules. But
possible, like, I mean, the best thing to do is actually stay a bit disconnected and do some integration on your own without the psychedelics. I mean,
mhm.
so I was actually chatting with a friend about this. Like, in the greatest, grandest version of the world, I would love to have a person for 3 months, like where you could actually, like, really, like, change their lives. And I mean, it's if you're dealing with a person that has stage 4 cancer, like,
Mhm.
I really believe that you could possibly, like, get over all those things over the course of 3 months where you control completely their environment, completely control their diet, etc. But like I mean, you have to accept the fact that a person still has a life, still has a family waiting for them, still has doctors that they need to see, etc. And so what you do is you like ideally at least for like 2, 3 days afterwards, don't really talk to too many people. It's like just take the time to integrate for yourself. Definitely stay in contact with me. It's whether it's
Mhm.
just texting through WhatsApp or video calls or whatever it is, I'm always available, and really just journal a lot and see what comes up for you and what your new thoughts are about life. And then the biggest question attached to that is, what are you going to be doing with this information? Like, it's great for you to have like this new information of, do you know what, like I was abused as a child, and I realized that this was a core of my self-esteem. Now the question is, so how am I going to interact with my coworkers? How am I going to interact with my family? What's going to be different? And you actually kind of like have to, in your mind, really think about how you want to be a different person when you get back to that other reality before you perhaps dive into it. And I mean, obviously, we'll do a lot of that over the course of those 7 days, but it is something that you really have to consider for yourself in a big way in whatever way comes for you too.
Has a client ever said like, "Hey, I'm going to bring my husband or my wife with me or my partner with me, so you can
Absolutely.
you can help explain, and that way they know what to expect when I get back," kind of thing? Because I would, the people in your home are closest to you, conceivably, so those people could probably use a little bit of an education on how this is going to go and what it's going to be like and what could be helpful when I get back, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's like because we have Airbnbs, like, I mean, like if a person wants to bring with their significant other, I would definitely suggest against having their children there. But if they want to bring with their significant other, then I mean, we just get an Airbnb with an extra room. I actually suggest for the course of that week. But again, it's just a suggestion that they don't actually sleep in the same bed, whatever it is. So the person has that time to integrate for themselves. But like, I mean, have the significant other there, have them join in conversations if the person feels comfortable to do it. And sometimes that in itself is where the healing can occur, where they can actually say things to their significant other, and I can facilitate the conversation in such a way that they actually get the healing in that moment.
Okay, that's really interesting. I didn't know that one could actually take down somebody they trust with them to have them there, whether they wanted to see them or
It's
not,
like,
but
so like I
I know
said,
what you mean.
set and setting.
Yeah,
So like, I mean, like, it's whatever the setting needs to be for you to have the most amount of change possible is what we're going to do.
yeah,
And that may even change halfway through the retreat. You're going to be like, do you know what? Like, I asked my husband to stay at a 5-star resort, but do you know what? I want him here. Like, I actually want him here, and I want to like
yeah,
deal with some stuff. It's come up for me, and I want you to facilitate the conversation for us, Ori.
yeah.
And that's what the person needs, and that's what we do. It's like, it's my logic is, it's if I'm giving you a week of my life, I'm going to do everything possible to get you to heal. And so like, however that needs to look, we will do it.
Yeah. So let's say somebody wants to do this. I know that you have your process, and of course, you have
Hmm.
your client intake and things you normally do. But as we put a kind of a bow on this process, and we'll get. I'm sure if somebody wants more in depth, I'll link everything for them to be able to work with you one on
Yeah,
one, like we always do in the description. But is it just a standard process? Though? So let's say somebody watches this or listens to this, they're interested in doing it. They just book a time with you, and then you start your process. Then you have
exactly.
your intake, and then you have like, we need to talk a few times. That type of thing is what does that process look like?
Uh, so, I mean, the steps are pretty simple. I mean, you can go to my website, origoldstein.com, and just it's on that website. There's going to be work with Ori, and you can do the psychedelic thing. And then you just click on I'm interested, and we set up a time and we chat. But quite honestly, at this point in time, like maybe even the better thing is join the Facebook group to some degree and like actually get to know me first. It's like, I guess if you're listening to this, you may have actually gotten to know me to some degree. But like my biggest thing is I want you to like, it's back to that word set and setting. I want you to completely understand who I am, what it is I do, and how it is I do it. I may not be for everyone, and that's perfectly fine. But like I'm not going to change based upon you. I need you to know exactly who you're dealing with, what my intentions are, where my heart lay, etc. Because I'm going to be giving you all of me. And so in whatever way that works, I want you to get to know me. So I mean, you come to origoldstein.com. We may choose to work together for a couple of months before we start while we're setting up the process. My people organize the different things in Jamaica, etc. We figure out exactly what it is you need, and then we just get you there and we make some changes.
We should mention on top of the website and the community, the Facebook group, they will have access to you, like direct access to you. We'll be doing some
Oh yeah,
live webinars, so there'll be some Q&A. So aside from just having to sit and watch my big red face ask you questions, like they'll actually be able to hear from you directly and ask questions. So yeah, that's great. But so this is perfect. This is exactly, I think, most of the questions that were on my mind anyway about the retreat. It sounds amazing. Maybe one of those days we'll do it and we'll film the experience, but I
I
don't know
told you
about that. Yeah.
the offer stands,
Yeah.
and I would love to work with you because I mean,
I
at the end of the day, you being one of the mouthpieces of human evolution movement, I want you to know what it's about.
yeah.
And I know the kind of changes we can make for you.
What we're gonna do, we'll go down. We'll stay down there for a couple. We may never come back actually, and so hopefully nobody will have to mop up Jamaican jerk chicken off the floor after I stuff myself with it and throw up everywhere. But anyway, now there's a lot of great information. Like I said, we'll be doing some live webinars, and I'll drop everything in the show notes. So good to see you again, and to be continued.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, it's Lee. Just one more thing before you go. If you've ever wondered if journaling could change your life, you can find out for free by downloading the Emotional Alchemy Journal from the link in the description. Also, if you're looking to connect with people who are just as passionate about growth as you are, check out our Facebook community. It's a great place to discuss what you've heard on the podcast and get access to exclusive content and sessions that are only available there. Just search for Human Evolution Movement on Facebook, or you can find the link in the description. Until next time, keep challenging the chaos within, be a little kinder to yourself, and let's continue to evolve together.